Hey Daydreamers, it's Alex, and today I'm sharing with you some of my 2021 reading and blogging goals slash aims. So I don't have a huge amount of reading goals because I am the kind of person who just doesn't stick to them. So I've not set a lot of goals like read a classic a month or read a series a month or read 3 books a week or something like that, because those are the kind of goals that I just don't stick to. And I think I've made a goal to read a classic a month in the past, and that year I read one classic, so it just doesn't work for me. A lot of the goals I like setting are more I have a few sort of goals set that are to help me read books that I would not have necessarily picked up. So they're books that are on my TBR, but they're books that I just, for whatever reason, keep not picking up. And so I like setting goals that help me pick those books up. I guess the best way to describe it is to just get into the goals. So I'll start with the smaller goals first. And firstly, my Goodreads challenge is set to 75 books. I usually read about 100 a year. And the reason I've set it to 75 is because of my next goal, which is just to read more adult fantasy, and they are long and dense, so I've set my Goodreads goal a bit lower. But yes, I'd like to read more adult fantasy. I'm not going to set any sort of number or goal more specific than that. I would just like to read adult fantasy this year. I think I may have had this goal last year, I can't remember, but I would also like to just kind of finish off some series that I've got started. So some examples are the Caraval series. I've only read the first book. The Rebel of the Sand series, I only have the last book left to read. The Dark Days Club series, I once again only have the last book left to read. These are all series that have just been unfinished for ages. So I'd just like to finish some series, which I'm already doing. It's the 4th as I'm filming this, and I've nearly finished the second book in the series that I started last year, so already making progress on those goals. So the slightly more structured goals, I guess, I have 2 sort of reading challenges throughout the year, and then I just have an idea of a way to choose books. So I've organised my TBR by publication year, and every time I find myself at a point where I've finished a monthly TBR, if I have one, or I just don't know what to read next, I'll use a random number generator to generate a year and read a book published in that year. So once again, it kind of pushes me to read books that I might not have picked up if I'd just been picking with no restrictions, because then I have to pick a book published in a certain year. And from about maybe 2017 and then back, so 2016, 2015, 2014, I have fewer and fewer unread books published in those years, so my selection is more limited, and that would hopefully mean I would choose a book that I might not have got to for another 2 or 3 years otherwise. So I'm on to my last 2 reading goals, sort of. They're more like kind of reading challenges I've set myself. And the first one is to do with the arcs that I own. So I have quite a few unread arcs. Most of them have just been passed on to me from friends, or I've got them at Yalk, like in a giveaway or something. I haven't got many unread arcs sent to me by publishers, which is good. But I went through all of my arcs and I put them into piles based on what month they came out, disregarding the year, but just what month they came out. And then for each month I picked the one that came out the longest ago, so this time I did take into account the year. And I'm going to read an arc a month, except for December, because I didn't have any arcs that came out in December, weirdly. So I will show you the books now. So for January we have 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton, and I have had this one for about a year. This came out in January 2020, so I've had this one for about a year. It's passed on to me by a friend, and I've just not picked it up, and I'm going to now read it in January because it's my January arc, and I've just recently read the synopsis and it actually sounds like something I would love, so I don't know why I haven't picked it up before now, and I'm now really excited to read it. It's set in a school under siege, and it seems to be set over 3 hours. February's is Are You Watching by Vincent Ralph. This one also came out in 2020 in February. I don't really know much about what it's about. So there's what's on the front. 1 killer, 13 victims, a million viewers, are you watching? Which sounds intriguing. And then on the back it just says the Magpie Man is coming. So I have no idea what this is about, but I think I've heard good things about this one. And I do like young adult thrillers, so I am really intrigued by this one and to see how it goes. And so I'll be reading this one in February, hopefully, if all goes to plan. For March, I will be reading Bright Storm by Vashti Hardy. This is a middle grade fantasy, which I do really enjoy. They are just a lot of fun to read. Once again, I really don't have any clue what this is about. I probably heard about it on Jade's channel, Jadey Ray Reads. I hear about a lot of middle grades on her channel. And I'm just excited to give this a go in March, and it'll be a really quick read anyway because it's middle grade. So in April I'll be reading Stargazing for Beginners by Jenny McLaughlin. This is a YA contemporary. It sounds like it might be somewhat hard-hitting, but it features a main character who's in a competition to win the chance to visit NASA headquarters, so it sounds kind of spacey, which sounds fun, and I'm quite excited to read this one too. I'm actually quite intrigued to read like all of these arcs, and yet they're all books that I've just kept putting off, and I don't know why. So that's why I'm doing this, is to make myself actually read them. For May's book, I have Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. I've heard a lot of amazing things about this one. This one came out back in 2018, and since then I've heard so many good things from so many different people, and I've been really keen to read this for quite a while. I think I got it in 2019. I definitely got it at Yauk, and I think it was in 2019, or it may have been 2018, I can't remember. But yeah, once again, I can't believe I haven't picked this up before now. So I will definitely, hopefully, pick it up in May as part of this sort of reading challenge type thing. And I'm really excited to get to this one. For June, we have The Waking Land by Cali Bates. I've had this one for a very long time. It came out in 2017. So I may have even got it in 2016, I can't remember. It came in an Illumicrate box back when they used to include arcs, and this was one of them. And I still haven't read it. I was partly waiting for the rest of the series so I could marathon it, but now they're all out and I own them all. I have no excuse not to have read this. This one is one I have sort of more middling, lesser interest in, which might be why I've not picked it up. But again, that's the whole point of this, is to make me pick it up. And if I don't like it, then that's 3 books off my TBR and off my shelves in one go. So it's definitely worth giving it a go. Also, the covers are just really pretty. So I would like to find out if I like it, because then I can keep the series because they are really, really pretty. So yeah, I'll be reading that one in June. For July, I have another one that was from a friend, passed on to me from a friend, and that is Good Girls Die First by Katherine Foxfield. I think this is another thriller, YA. Really enjoy those. This one came out last year, so it's not been too long. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself now, but I am looking forward to getting to this one finally. Another one passed on to me by a friend, and one that I am actually quite excited for. Well, like very excited for. But I've just not got around to it yet, so I'm hoping this will make me get around to it. This one's for August, and it is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. This is It's like the US edition, but it's the UK arc. It's got a sticker here on it. So if I do enjoy this one, I will probably pass this copy on to someone else and buy a UK finished copy because the UK cover is so pretty. But this is one I have been wanting to read for a while, and I just once again needed that push. So this is hopefully going to be that push, and I'll read it. And I think book 2 is coming out soon, or is already out recently. So I'm really, really excited to get to this one. For September, I have another quite older one, and that's Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nichols. I'm just very intrigued by this one. I love reading feminist books, and this is about, like, this is set during the time when women were trying to get the vote. My history is not very good, but this sounds really good, and I'm really, really keen to read this one. And once again, I just keep not getting to it. So hopefully this year and this challenge will really push me to read it, because it does sound like something I would really enjoy. October is another one I got at Yalk. I think this might have been last year. No, of course it wasn't. There was no Yalk last year. This one was 2019. I got this one at Yalk 2019. And that is Scars Like Wings by Erin Stewart. I've read a book similar to this. I can't remember what it was called. It was a while ago and I don't own it anymore. But I really enjoyed it. And I am once again quite keen to pick this one up. Once again, just haven't got around to it. Once again, hopefully this challenge will push me to get to it. And I should hopefully be reading this one in October. And then the last one for November, because like I said, I don't have a December one, is Crown of Oblivion by Julie Eschbauff. I picked this one up at an ARC swap type thing, and it's a YA fantasy, and I love those. I don't really know much about this one, I just picked it up because it was there, and so hopefully I will enjoy this one when I get to it in November. So those are the arcs that I'm reading for my ARC challenge. My other challenge this year is that I asked Beth and Blue, my co-tubers, to pick me 6 books each from my TBR that they want me to read this year. And once again, the idea is that if they're picking, they're obviously going to pick, well, they hopefully would have picked books that I may not have got to this year. They may have just been books that I left and didn't prioritise, and this way it is making me prioritise them. So they've both picked me 6 books, and I have already made a page on my blog to track my progress, which I'll leave linked down below for you if you want to follow my progress with this challenge. But I shall tell you what they picked. I think they picked some good ones. There are some I may have got to this year, and there are some that I think there is a very high chance I would have just put off and not got to this year. So I'm really happy with that. So I shall start with Beth's picks. The first book she picked for me is The Invisible Life of Addy Larue by V.E. Schwab. This one came out last year, and I meant to read it last year and I didn't, so I am glad that Beth has picked me this one, because it means I can't put it off again for another year, because I really do want to read this one, and hopefully very soon. But I'm sure you all know what this is about, because I think everyone at this point has read it except me, and I don't really know how to describe it. Beth's second pick was The Quiet at the End of the World by Lauren James. This is a very good example of why I want to do this challenge. This book came out in 2019. I can't remember which month. So it has been out for a really long time. I love Lauren James. I've read all of her other books, but I just have not got to this one. And so I'm really glad that it's one that was picked for me. So that means I have to read it this year, because I really do want to read it. And now that I have to, hopefully I actually will. It's a sci-fi, I think. Okay, it's about a virus that goes around and infects the entire planet, so that will be fun for right now. But this virus affects fertility, it causes global infertility, and it follows 2 characters who are the 2 youngest people left. or who they're the two youngest people on Earth at the time this book is set. And I'm just really intrigued to read this one and see what happens, because I really, really love Lauren James's books. Her sci-fi books are so good. Beth's next pick is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Diva. I was meant to read this one in November and I just didn't. I kind of, in the second half of the year, went into just this kind of reading slump. I didn't stop reading, but it did really affect my reading. Like, I didn't read anywhere near as much as I normally do. So I didn't get to this one, and I'm really disappointed because I was really excited to read it. So now this year I'm going to read it and I'm really happy. And Mason Diva is non-binary, and this book follows a character called Ben who comes out to their parents as non-binary, so its own voices. And I'm just really excited to read it. It's not something I've read much of in any fiction, so I'm really excited to read this one. And okay, I'm just going to stop holding that for now. Beth's fourth pick is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Beth read this book this year. Beth read this book in 2020, last year, and she loved it, like, so much, and so now she's making me read it, which I'm really excited to read this one, so I'm not mad about that. I was going to read it when the series was complete, and then it went from a duology to a trilogy, so I've had to put it off longer, but hopefully it will complete this year, because I now have to read it this year, and I'm really excited to see what I think of this one. I feel like it's been very hit or miss for some people, and I'm hoping I love it. Beth's fifth pick was The Stormcrow by Kailyn Josephson. I believe Beth has also read this one and really enjoyed it. I've had this one for a while. It came in a Fairy Loot box, possibly in 2019, seeing as it came out in 2019. No, it came in 2018, because it came out in July 2019. It definitely came in the Fairy Loot box before the release date. But I just haven't read this one yet. This one is only a duology, and I have both books, so I can just marathon it, which is my favourite way to read series. And I am really excited to read this one. It says it's partly like Eragon, which I love. You can see my Eragon books just there. So I am really keen to read this one. I believe it has like mental health rep, like depression rep, which is not really something you see a lot of in fantasy, so that will be very interesting, and I think I've heard it's done very well. And I'm assuming it has crows in it. And Beth's last pick is Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nyon. I think that might be how you say her name. I read the first book, Girls of Paper and Fire, either last year or the year before, I can't remember, and I loved it so much. It was so good. I have been holding off continuing on with the series until the third book comes out, and I think it does come out this year, but if not, I will be reading this one anyway, and I am really excited to carry on with this series. I will probably end up rereading the first book because it was so good and I just want to. So yes, I'm very excited to carry on with this series finally. It was so good. So now I'm going to show you the books that Blue picked for me. Blue picked for me at the beginning of December, and at that point I was still convinced there were a few books I was going to read before the end of the year. One of those being Addy Larue, which is why they did not pick Addy Larue for me. Otherwise I'm completely sure they would have. But these are the books that Blue picked for me. So first up we have Pages & Co. Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. Blue has read at least this book. I don't know if they've read the whole series, but they love this book so much and they obviously want me to read it, and I'm really excited to. And also I just need you to appreciate the beauty that is the naked hardcover. And that's the reason I spent probably more money than I should have trying to hunt down the hardcover instead of just buying the paperback. But I'm very excited to read these books. I've heard great things about them. I have the whole series and I'm really excited to dive into them. Blue's next pick is by one of their favourite authors ever, or probably just their favourite author ever, not one of. Maybe. One of their favourite authors ever, and that is Storm by Brigid Kemmerer. This is book one in the Elemental series. They love Brigid Kemmerer and they love this series, and they want more people in general to read this series, but seeing as I gave them power over my 2021 TBR, they obviously chose this one for me. I am excited to read it. Every now and then I get into the right mood for some paranormal romance, and so when I am, this one will be ready for me. I will definitely have read it by the end of the year though, because I have to. Blue's third pick is Shadows on the Moon by Zoe Marriott. I actually think I got this book from Blue. I think they were unhauling it. But I've been interested in reading Zoe Marriott's books for a while, and so I am really keen to give this one a try. I've heard good things. Blue really enjoys her books, and I'm really excited to see what I think. Blue's fourth pick is It Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne. I think they've read this book and enjoyed it, I think. But I am pretty sure they picked it for me because they know that Holly Bourne is one of my favourite authors ever, and I still have not read this book. It has been out for years and I haven't read it, and I can't believe it. I spent most of 2020 in just a huge fantasy mood, so it didn't leave much room for me to get into this one. So hopefully, well, I definitely have to read it this year now. I'm sure I'm going to love it because I've loved all of Holly Bourne's other books, and I'm just so excited to finally get to this one. And thank you so much, Blue, for choosing this for me so that now I have to read it. Blue's fifth pick for me is one that obviously I haven't read it, but they haven't read it either, and that is actually because we were meant to buddy read it last year and we just didn't. It just didn't happen. And that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So hopefully we will get around to buddy reading this one this year, but even if we don't, I will definitely have read it. I'm quite intimidated by this one because it is quite long. It's longer than The Night Circus, and The Night Circus already took me a month to read. So I'm quite keen to buddy read this one to give me some structure around how I read it, so that hopefully I finish it much more quickly. I did enjoy The Night Circus, so I am looking forward to reading this one, but I am also still quite nervous about it. And Blue's final pick for me is Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I'm really keen to read this one. As far as I know, it's fantasy standalone. I also got the Illumicrate edition, which is really pretty. Yes, as far as I know, it's a fantasy standalone. I love fantasy standalones. It sounds really good. I've heard good reviews from like when it first came out. And I'm really, really excited to read this one. Let me see if I can tell you anything about what it's about. I tend to know what a book's about, get interested in it, buy it, and then forget what it's about, but I remember the interest, and so I still read it anyway. It's weird. So the main character, her father is the king, and he dies unexpectedly, and so she's now suddenly having to rule with no warning, and she also believes that her father was actually murdered, so there's all that. I'm really keen to read this one. I'm really, really hoping I enjoy it. So those are my kind of reading goals and challenges for the year. In terms of blogging, I would just like to try and be more consistent with my blogging, which is my goal every year, and last year, 2020, I did actually improve on my consistency. I can obviously improve more, which is why it's my goal again this year, but I am pleased that I did manage to improve a bit. Oh yes, I would also just like to somewhat control my book buying. I generally tend to buy more books in a year than I read, and it's why my TBR is so massive now. It's like 298 books. So I would like to read more books than I buy. That's it. I don't have a set number to get my TBR down to or anything. I would just like to make sure it is somewhat lower than it is now, and definitely not higher. But yeah, those are all my goals, really. Let me know what some of your goals are. Hopefully we can support each other and cheer each other on with our goals. Keep an eye out for Beth's video on Wednesday and Blue's video on Friday, and I will see you next week. Bye!